Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. My name is Jesse. The Orioles just got finished sweeping the Chicago White Sox, and even though it was a very eventful series, I'm gonna take some inspiration from Tyler's previous episode, and I'm gonna make this a news intensive episode because there was some things that happened over the last few days that need to be talked about. So before we get into the show, though, just gonna say that Bet Online is your number one source for the NBA and the NHL playoffs this season. Every stat, every matchup, and live odds while the games are being played. When the game's over, you can head over to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of over 150 slot games. And head over to the website today. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE for 50% welcome bonus in your first deposit. And Bet Online is the game starts here. So uh, basically, the Orioles did end up sweeping the Chicago White Sox. It was, as I said, it was like a very eventful series. Everybody, I think, probably at this point is aware of how Game One of the series ended, where it was the pop up on the infield, and it was ruled interference on the runner at second base, interfering with Gunnar Henderson's path to getting the baseball. So that was sort of a very interesting way to start off the series. And then, of course, there was another play that happened very similar to that. Not at shortstop, but and it ended up not being called. But uh, it was just kind of funny how this big controversial play to end the game sort of got repeated, and you don't see this sort of thing happen very frequently in Major League Baseball. It is a very rare occurrence. Um, so before I talk a little, I'm gonna go through the games a little bit, like very sort of superficially. But the big news coming out um, of the last few days is that Dean Kremer is headed to the IL. Now, with this in mind, I am keeping in mind the sort of when thinking about this discussion, I am thinking about the Atlanta Braves losing Ronald Acuna for the entire season, and uh, and if you're a Braves fan, I am sorry. That is a really hard loss to suffer. That would be the equivalent, although it might even be worse, but it would like be for Orioles losing Gunnar Henderson for the entire year or something like that. So it's a brutal, upsetting injury. So Dean Kremer went to the IL, and it's not that level of bad or seriousness. Hopefully, um, from how things have seemed, hopefully this should be it's a right tricep injury. And it doesn't seem to be too much of a risk of an extended IL stint. It seems like it'll be in the range of a couple weeks to a month. So especially for a starting pitcher, injuries are pretty common. So Dean Kremer, the Orioles have like relied on him since he's been on our team to be sort of the reliable force, the steady force in the rotation, throwing large amounts of innings. I'm not looking at it right now, but somewhere in the 175 range of innings every year. Um, and the Orioles have really, really depended on sort of him as a stabilizing force. At the beginning of last year, I'm pretty sure he was the number 3 starter. We talk about how he's a great number 5 starter on this show. So yeah, he's going to the IL with a right tricep strain. This is not I mentioned Dean Kremer's durability in contrast to someone like John Means, who headed to the IL the day before. Kremer has not had a lot of injury history in the past. So hopefully this is going to be just a brief stint on the IL, not going to be a big deal, and he's going to be able to continue once he returns. Now, it's very possible. I mean, this is kind of always the thing with injuries for starting pitchers. In some ways, of course, we are going to miss Dean Kremer. I'm going to talk about a little bit how the Orioles, I think, will end up replacing him, at least temporarily, while he's out in the starting rotation. But the thing with starting pitchers is short, minor stints on the IL over the course of an extended season sometimes can be like blessings in disguise, right? Because just sort of shelving some of the workload. Um, of course, as I was just saying, like Dean Kremer throws just short of probably 200 innings most years. And we definitely expected and hoped that he would do that this year again. But uh sort of toward the end of the season when you get into the playoffs, if you have a starting pitcher who has been there throughout the course of the season, thrown every 5 or maybe in certain cases 6 days, then that's a sort of a situation where who knows what that pitcher is going to look like when it comes to playoff time in terms of fatigue, in terms of stuff, command, mechanics, all these sorts of things. So sometimes if a pitcher gets a late start to a season or has a minor injury that doesn't have any effects moving forward in the season, sometimes these things can, in the long run, be a good thing. Now, not trying to unfairly sugarcoat this because the short term damage to the Orioles rotation could be significant. We're going to sort of find out. But there has been, because of injuries to the starting rotation, there has been increased pressure. Certain guys from the bullpen have moved to the starting rotation, which has in turn put more pressure on the bullpen. And because these guys in the starting rotation have gone down, not only has sort of the bullpen suffered a bit because now guys we relied upon in the bullpen are now in the rotation, but also it's a situation where these bullpen guys moving back into the rotation, it's disruptive to them for one, but also now the bullpen isn't as strong because they're absent from the bullpen. So it has sort of multiple negative effects. It has ripple effects throughout the entire pitching staff, which can be negative. Hopefully, the Orioles, especially if Kremer is out for a short period of time, will be able to weather this hit. But there might be some short term complications and difficulties and some decisions that Brandon Hyde has to make sort of to navigate through this period of flux and of a bit of uncertainty for the starting rotation and also for the bullpen. So in game 3, which was the game that Dean Kremer was scheduled to start, Albert Suarez went back to the rotation to try to fill the void, basically. Now, it's not entirely clear whether he is just going to be the replacement long term until Dean Kremer returns. I don't think that's been announced yet. But with that said, um, he is the guy that the Orioles turn to in this game. He pitched really well. He pitched 4 shutout innings. It was yeah, so when he started his game 3 where he replaced Kremer, and I yeah, so it is my guess that Suarez will return to the rotation. They haven't announced him. They haven't like formally announced him to take or to I guess take the next turn in the rotation. So I guess it's possible the Orioles do some shuffling there, but after Suarez pitched 4 innings, for solid innings. Even if he didn't pitch well, I still think he would be the guy, especially since Cole Irvin is also in the rotation now, replacing John Means, and he's going to start in this first game against the Red Sox here. But I do think it will be Suarez. And there is so the big reason is because I think this is because, well, Albert Suarez, he's been in the bullpen since the beginning of May. He had limited number of starts at the when he did come up for the Orioles and pitch for the Orioles. And but in his limited starts, he did really well. He had really good success. When he got moved to the bullpen, it was because we had sort of more proven, established people returning to the rotation. And now we're in a situation where we don't have that stability. And given that he pitched really well in his limited starts, I think that this is a perfect opportunity to have Albert Suarez start again and give him sort of an opportunity to demonstrate what he can do, and for the Orioles to try to identify and figure out, okay, what really is the best role for you on this team. I think he is sort of in a way, well, I don't want to overdo the comparison to Tyler Wells, but I think there is a slight comparison in that this is a guy that it's sort of unclear where he best fits. Now, granted, I think it's more clear at this point with Tyler Wells where he best fits. I think the ideal role for Tyler Wells is sort of a back end piece of the bullpen. But as far as but for a long time, that was really unclear for Tyler Wells. And I think we're sort of in a similar position with Albert Suarez. Um, on paper, he's definitely a late bloomer coming into Major League Baseball. And it's not like he was a highly coveted prospect and he's made his debut, and no. But with that said, he has been really impressive. And I think that with the injury of Dean Kremer, this is a good opportunity to give him more starts and to try to learn more information to see if he really is a potential viable starter in a major league rotation, whether that then translates to potential trade value for the Orioles, or whether there is a way, maybe with injuries, to have him be sort of stay a longer term in this rotation. So I think that yeah, there is some opportunity here for the Orioles to do some learning and some scouting about Albert Suarez. And I think this is a good opportunity for them to do that. So basically, I think that the Orioles, especially because of their ability to identify and find pitchers, this is sort of a problem the Orioles are going to have. But I think that especially with Suarez, because he's been so good and because there is a need in the rotation, why not play this out and try to learn more about him? So, because so he only ended up going 4 innings in his start, basically because he sort of now needs to be re-stretched back out into a starting pitcher again, after being in the bullpen since the beginning of May, basically. And so because he was a starting pitcher, just, or had some starts not too long ago, I think it'll be like an abbreviated process for him, relative to somebody like Kyle Bradish, who was sort of taking it slow, returning from his injury. Again, it's a little different situation because Bradish was injured and Suarez just was moved to the bullpen. But after being in the bullpen and throwing 1 inning and sort of 1 inning, every 2 or 3 days, or 1 2/3 innings or whatever it is, every couple days, you're not going to just return that guy and say, hey, go pitch 7 innings for us. So taking it slow, he pitched 4, and then hopefully that will steadily increase as we keep going. assuming it is him, which I think it will be, but I don't have anything definitive on that yet. Um, so that's the big first thing. And then we're gonna see how the Orioles sort of navigate, as I was saying, how the Orioles, Brandon Hyde and Elias navigate this situation. There are internal, other internal options for the Orioles that might end up being utilized at some point, especially if things get rocky for these guys in the rotation, or hopefully not. But if there is another injury, then the Orioles might have to go even deeper to try to find an internal solution. Um, but so the other big news coming out of the last few days was the Orioles did make a deal to get some immediate bullpen help. The Orioles did acquire Tiago Vieira and Aneris Rodriguez from the Milwaukee Brewers. Maybe they are going to be a long-term trading partner, um, especially if both organizations have good minor league systems, have talent within the organization, and we're both good teams. And we say, hey, the Brewers, we kind of need this, and the Brewers come to the Orioles and say, yeah, we're looking for this. Can we make a swap? And both organizations have availability and have depth and these sorts of things. So who knows? The Orioles did, of course, make that big move with Corbin Burns, Joey Ortiz, and DL Hall. So maybe the Brewers are going to turn into a frequent trade partner for the Orioles. But as far as this move, so Vieira, of course, Vieira is the one that is the relief help for the Orioles. He is sort of the short term solution for the Orioles bullpen. Now, he's not immediately on the Orioles, but I would not be surprised at all to see him with the Orioles in the next couple weeks or so. That would not be at all surprising to me. I think it's actually sort of expected, given how much things have been moving for the Orioles bullpen recently and for the rotation. So basically the thing on him, he's 31. He has great stuff. But he lacks command. He actually made his major league debut for the Seattle Mariners against the Baltimore Orioles in a blowout game. Um, and yeah, so we're gonna see. I'm excited actually by Vieira, because it is clear that he does have talent. He throws hard. He throws in the upper 90s, which I like guys that throw hard. I know maybe that's a little superficial, or Eli would probably say, no, you got to appreciate a pitcher that has great command, or like the movement on the pitches, which I appreciate both of those things too, especially I guess out of those two, the movement. I love movement on pitches, of course, too. But I also like when guys can throw 98 miles an hour. It's really fun to watch. And he throws high 90s. So I think that most likely, my guess is that he's going to stick around for a couple weeks in the minors, maybe work on a couple things in the minor leagues, and then I think the Orioles will find a way to get him up to the majors. And then hopefully he actually gets a real opportunity to get uh, introduced and sort of acquainted with the Orioles pitching analysis and analysis team and pitching coaches, etc. And hopefully we can and Vieira can utilize and sort of maximize the potential that he demonstrates and has demonstrated, but just has never been able to fully put together to be an effective major league pitcher. So Aneris Rodriguez, he's a younger prospect. He's not even 20 yet, so we're not going to see him for a while. But we will keep an eye on him as he progresses through the minor leagues. And then as far as what the Orioles gave up, the Orioles gave up Garrett Stallings. He was in AAA for the Orioles. We got him from the Angels in the Jose Iglesias trade. But he's at a point where he's 26. He wasn't pitching well, and he's probably, if you're a AAA pitcher, um, you probably just need to figure a few things out and get the right opportunity. And it's very possible that you're in the major leagues. But it wasn't working out for the Orioles. It wasn't Stallings wasn't pitching well in our organization, and he was sort of at the age where you sort of expect guys to start producing at that point. So because the Orioles needed some bullpen depth right now, I think that the Orioles just decided we're comfortable giving Stallings up. And yeah, that's sort of how it went for the Orioles. Um, yeah, I mean, a lot of Oriole fans probably have heard Garrett Stallings' name mentioned. If you're really big fans, you've probably heard his name mentioned, or maybe you've seen him go pitch at AAA. But yeah, I don't think that it's unlikely that we parted with somebody who's going to eventually be a Cy Young candidate, and I think the Orioles were sort of minimizing uh sort of minimizing in the sense of what we were parting with. So the Orioles don't seem to be getting all-star caliber players in return, but the Orioles also weren't giving that up in exchange. So it seems like a pretty even trade as far as I can tell. Um, and Stallings, so Stallings is also, he's been in the bullpen and he's been in the rotation too. So, from that sense, Vieira, I was gonna say Rivera, Vieira, is is just a strictly a bullpen piece. So the Orioles get two pitchers, I'm sorry, two players, in exchange for Garrett Stallings. So I will go through the games a little bit, but I am going to comment a little bit on a big decision that Brandon Hyde was sort of forced to make in game 4 of the 4-game series against the White Sox. This probably is one of the toughest decisions that major league managers have to make in Major League Baseball, and that is the decision as to whether to pull a starting pitcher who is throwing a no-hitter or not. Now, Kyle Bradish threw 7 scoreless no-hit innings against the Chicago White Sox in his final start. Of course, he's just sort of getting back. I believe that this was his 5th start in since his return from injury in Major League for the Orioles in his return. Yeah, so and leading up to this point, Kyle Bradish has not gone more than 5 innings in any game, and he has not thrown more than 90 pitches in any game either. So the thing is that, of course, this is the biggest and most difficult decision managers have to make, because pitchers don't always get the opportunity to throw no hitters, and it's a really big deal when a pitcher gets that sort of opportunity. Now the Orioles could have gone for a combined no hitter. Unfortunately, Danny Coulomb came into the game immediately after to relieve Kyle Bradish, and he immediately gave up a home run, which blew the shutout and blew up the no hitter and blew the no hitter. Um, but I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the decision that Brandon Hyde made. Ultimately, I do think it was the right one. And I actually, as far as no hitters go, this I think actually was one of the easier decisions for a manager to make. Now, the thing is that because of sort of how Kyle Bradish has been, I guess, taking baby steps sort of to get back into his sort of full capacity as a major league starting pitcher. and returning to the Kyle Bradish that throw 6-7 no shutout or one run sort of games that we're accustomed to seeing from him. He threw in this game through 7 innings. He had thrown 103 pitches, which as I said had been 13 more pitches than anything he had thrown prior. And he still had 2 innings to go to complete the game. So just, you can imagine that if we throw him another couple innings, it's probably going to take him potentially 130 pitches. Now, if he is a 5-pitch inning the next inning, obviously that would be adjusted. But most likely he would probably need around 130 pitches to finish out the game. Now, this would probably be unreasonable under normal circumstances for most managers in Major League Baseball. If you've thrown 100 pitches in Major League Baseball, most of the time for one start, most of the time the manager is going to come and eventually take the ball from you. In the situation of Kyle Bradish, especially it being a situation where he is just returning, so you're not gonna make him throw 40 more pitches than he has been as he's gradually re-entering the starting rotation. So it's a tough decision because you want to give him sort of a chance at potentially a once in a lifetime opportunity, even though Bradish is definitely the guy or one of the guys that seems like he is capable of resurrecting this and throwing a no-hitter again in the future, hopefully with a lower pitch count. But especially in a situation where, yeah, he's just gradually re-entering the rotation, it would be not smart, and it would be I don't think any manager in Major League Baseball in Brandon Hyde's situation would have let him try to go for a no-hitter at that point. So I think it was definitely the right decision to take him out. It was difficult and unfortunate to watch that. Yeah, and sort of just to clarify, because it is, I think when I say that it's the most difficult decision, it's probably the most emotionally difficult situation for a manager. Even though I think logically it made sense for Brandon Hyde, and there was no way that he could justify to himself, to Elias, to Oriole fans, the organization, or even Kyle Bradish himself to allow him to go back out there. But with that said, it's probably an emotionally difficult situation for both of them, because even though they know it's not the right thing to do, they still want to do it, and they want to give themselves and Kyle Bradish an opportunity to throw a no-hitter. So that was really difficult. With that said, it was an amazing start from Kyle Bradish. He looked amazing. And so I am gonna briefly talk about him again when I get to the takeaways, but I'm just gonna run through a few quick highlights from the games. So in game one, Jorge Mateo, really excited to see it, had a big 3-run home run. The O's pen in the 9th inning, came into the game. The O's pen had a big lead in the 9th inning. I think it was 8-2 at that point. The Orioles bullpen gave up 4 runs, had more runners on base. I think tried, or not. Obviously, we're not trying, but we're trying to. We looked like we were trying to give the game away. And fortunately, the Orioles were able to shut it down in the 9th inning and end up winning that game 8-6. And it came with some help from a controversial interference call that I referenced earlier, and a similar play, as I said, happened later in the series. The runner at second base got called for interference. Gunnar Henderson bumped him slightly as he was running to the ball. It didn't interfere with Henderson's ability to make the play by any stretch. was still under the ball with days in advance of the ball coming to the ground. And but It was just an out, and yeah, and it was a strange double play to end the game. So that's how game one ended. The Orioles did win that 8-6. So Dylan Tate made his first appearance since returning to the Orioles. He got a win in the second game. Game two, the Orioles had a tight lead that Cano surrendered after Corbin Burns had come out of the game. But the Orioles immediately scored 2 runs, got back, and won the game 6-4. In game three, very frustrating game to start the game. The O's were losing, got nothing off Eric Fetty, but then were able to score 5 runs in the top of the eighth inning. They were the only runs the Orioles scored the entire game. And the Orioles beat Michael Kopech, who is, at least historically, has been a very competent back end pitcher. He got the loss in the game. Dylan Tate got the win in that game. After coming back, he pitched well. He pitched a couple good innings. And then in game four, like I was saying, Bradish was the star in the game. The Orioles did end up winning that one too. Fairly easily, fairly comfortably, especially behind Bradish's pitching performance. So, final takeaways from basically the series. Kyle Bradish has come back. Seems unaffected by the injury. He has pitched to a sub-2 ERA since his return. As I was saying, like, he hasn't gone very long, very deep into most of the games. He did go 7 innings this game, but he had a low pitch count for a lot of it. So, but he has a sub-2 ERA, and he is pitching really well. The stuff looks there. Everything looks great. So he's been doing really well. So really excited to see that. And then the other thing that I do want to say, maybe we've talked about him, but maybe not quite enough. But Jorge Mateo, he had the big home run in the first game of the series, big 3-run home run, which anytime Jorge Mateo hits a home run, I'm excited to see. I'm actually sort of more excited to see Jorge Mateo hit an actual home run that leaves the stadium more than like an infield or uh oh, more than an in the park home run. I'm like more excited to see him hit a regular home run than an inside the park home run. But Yeah, basically he's been great, and he's been playing really well. He's been hitting really well. It seems like he has a hit every game. He's playing it almost, of course. And he's been really playing an important role. He's been playing at second base. Now, don't get me wrong, Jorge Mateo has always had a really important role on this team. But now he's basically having a starting role for the Orioles. And he's really been excelling at second base. Of course, the bat always could be a little better. We would like it to be better. I think he has it in him to hit better than he is, but he's hitting better than he was last year. And overall, he's been playing almost every day, starting almost every day at second base. And when he doesn't start, he's coming into the games as a pinch runner, defensive replacement, these sorts of things. So, or a pinch hitter sometimes when it's a lefty matchup. So, yeah, been really exciting to see Jorge Mateo playing so well. I'm yeah, really and it's also been really nice to see the Gunnar Henderson and Mateo work together, turning double plays. So they've been great, and it's been really fun to watch. Of course, Jorge Mateo is like a shortstop talent playing second base. So anytime you have that kind of situation, it's really fun to watch. So as long as they make those sort of needed adjustments, angles, and turning double plays and stuff like that. Those things that change, covering the bag on a steal, those things that change when you move over to second base. But he's been doing really well over there. So really excited to see that. And yeah, the Orioles do get the sweep against a really bad Chicago White Sox team. So I think anything short of a sweep, okay, maybe you're not too disappointed if you win 3 out of 4, especially on the road. But I think if the Orioles had lost any game, they would have probably been kicking themselves a little bit and had been hoping to win. But it is a good bounce back series after having been swept by the Cardinals. So coming up next, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we are at home against the Red Sox. It's going to be Cooper Criswell versus Cole Irvin. It's going to be Brian Bayo versus Grayson Rodriguez in Game 2. And then in the final game, Cutter Crawford versus Corbin Burns. So that is it. I'm going to wrap up this episode. This episode has been presented by Bet Online. Feel free to give us a rating, a review. Please subscribe on YouTube and like the video. Comment any thoughts, analysis that you have. Follow us on X and on Instagram at the Warehouse Pod. And then if you have any thoughts, concerns, questions, or criticisms, you can feel free to email the show at thewarehousepod@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening, and go O's.